Hi there, guys. How are you? Welcome. So today we're going to talk about the new codes that have opened up around abundance and finance. This particular code was spurred by young people, actually, because there's a huge polarity between, it's not just young people, obviously. All of us are experiencing a clear polarity between those that play the money game for power and those that use it in the process of creation. So that's really the distinction. The distinction is money is simply a tool. Remember, I want you to know that, my background is as an economist. I actually studied economics in university, or as my friends in the UK that are joining us say, uni. So I didn't realize how much it would apply later in my life. Even though it looks like I don't do anything that has to do with finance or economics, really the codes for this make a lot more sense to me because of that background. So let's get to it. At the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to summarize yesterday's codes. So just stay tuned. Let's see. Couple of things first. Why are we doing this? Why we're doing this is because yesterday, today, and for 3 days in a row, we are today again at what time? 4:44 Eastern time. That's 9:44 in the UK, and you can extrapolate from that if you're in Europe. For those of you in Australia, or at least on let's say the east coast of Australia, it's 14 hours. And so, and then New Zealand, hopefully you can extrapolate. So guys, why are we doing this? Because the polarity in the world right now between the people who are trying to sequester power using money as the means to do that are trying to use their financial success to win somehow, to win a game that none of us are playing, have activated a paradigm that is not what economics, not what true, authentic economics was all about. So what's the game that you and I are likely interested in playing? So this is where we get to open some of the portals. I see a lot of you joining. So what is a portal, first of all, because I want you to have the context. So what we're going to do is we're going to answer the question, what is a portal? What is an activation? And then we're going to do the activation itself. Okay? And the activation is for the doorway to these codes. The reason why we're doing them is because coming up in upstate New York, I'll be doing a workshop in Rhinebeck at the Omega Institute. They asked me to come there and do a program. And I wanted to make sure that all of you were along for the ride. If you really want to get the upgrades, in other words, we're activating the doorway, we're actually going to be embodying the codes when we go to Rhinebeck. So the one from yesterday is about collapsing your future self, that sense of urgency you feel, and collapsing the difference between the trajectory your soul wanted to go on and the direction that you did go on. Okay, so that's what we're doing. That was yesterday. We're going to be experiencing that in Rhinebeck coming up on a very auspicious day, June 21st, where we actually get to make new choices. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is around new relationship to money for unicorns. It's really a new paradigm, a new operating system, which is what we're talking about this morning. And then this afternoon at 4:44, we're going to be talking about my favorite one, which is ending duality and being able to manifest the 0 point of all possibility on any subject, on the subject of love, on the subject of money, subject of health in your body, and all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're doing. We're opening the doorways to the codes in these videos. And then what we're doing in Rhinebeck, which I highly recommend if you're called, you come. In Rhinebeck, what we're going to be doing is embodying it. And embodiment basically means that it becomes you. So instead of having to think about it like a concept, and I'm standing on a podium teaching something, you actually experience it firsthand, and your biology starts to change around to come to terms with and connect with all of creation, connect with consciousness in a way that you have a new autopilot. So instead of trying really hard and struggling with these and trying to understand the concepts, which is the booby prize of all booby prizes when it comes to doing a workshop, when you do a workshop, it's so important that it is experiential, that you actually experience the embodiment. In other words, it becomes your new default instead of something that you fart around with and try. And I mean, we've all done that, right? I'm sure you've experienced that too, where you're taking a workshop and for the next year you kind of struggle with the concepts and it becomes an intellectual game of practicing, and it's like an affirmation where you just practice over and over and over again. And what I'm saying to you is that it's possible in a few days to actually make the shift, to actually embody the shift. Okay, so that's what we're doing in Rhinebeck. We're embodying the codes that we're opening the doorway to today. All right, so new relationship to money. So the first thing is, what is a portal? All right, so everybody breathe for a second. Remember, we're going on an experiential journey together. I want you to stay with me the whole time because we're going to do 2 steps and then we're actually going to do the activation itself. So what is a portal? Well, it's as though, so I want you to kind of imagine, I'm going to draw this today because I think it's really important. I want you to kind of imagine that here's you, here's your cute little eyeballs, but here's your pineal gland. Okay, so you're bald. And what happens is, if there's a lot of yous, which there are out there these days, tons of people out there in the world, and they're noticing the discrepancy, and I just feel this with yourselves. As you close your eyes and breathe, feel what I'm saying. That's one of the keys to actually integrating with the information. It isn't about learning it, you guys. The booby prize would be to say to yourself after we finish our little communion together that, okay, I knew that already, or I know that. Remember, I speak in codes. The 99% of all of us that lives in metaphysics actually communicates through photon packages of light. There have been many studies now, I've been collecting them all, many studies that show that most of our communion is between our DNA. So my DNA is talking to your DNA. And as I upgrade and come to new understandings, because that's literally my job on the planet, that's why I was born, to assist us all to build bridges. Why? Because I'm such an intense wanter of finding the fluid way, finding the way home for people who want to build bridges to a better world. I'm not interested in working with people who want to build bridges to being, to taking over the world. So although we all want to take over the world, but it's not us, it's our hearts that want to emanate into the world. So if you imagine that if we speak in codes, we speak in biophotons, we're all emanating those biophotons. When we have a yearning, when we look at polarity, when we look at things that don't work in the world, when we look at the discrepancy between people, when we look at how disempowered some feel, when we look at how less than one can be, especially when it pertains to money, or how powerless we feel sometimes when it pertains to money. That is completely far away from consciousness, knowing that you are a divine child of an infinite universe, therefore you just are abundant. So the conversation that takes you away from abundance, the conversation in your mind, the reason why it feels bad is because that's the feeling is consciousness's way of letting you know that you're off track from the truth. And of course, you're a magnetic being. So when you have conversations within yourself that are incongruent with the truth of who you are, you actually won't even see the opportunities in front of you that will have you be abundant. And you will not have completely non-linear results that bring you miraculous things that allow you to flourish, because your eyes and your concerns are pointed to either excavating what you think is wrong with you or analyzing what you think is wrong with you. And as long as your attention is on all of that, what happens is you can't flourish. But what I'm talking about is not this right now, this conversation right now, being about changing your belief systems. I could give a crap about that. What I care about is embodying a new operating system for humanity. So listen very closely. For those of you who haven't done our work before, it's really important that you get this. Your DNA can actually connect to new ways of being, the ways of being of which exist as sacred geometries and frequencies and photons. That's why some people just seem to have an easy time with finances. They seem to have an easy time with going direct about money and all of that. They seem to just flourish naturally. I used to not flourish naturally. This whole conversation comes from me living on a sailboat that was completely mortgaged to the hilt, and I was $40,000 in debt. So this is a code that I love, and I'm so happy to share with you guys. And by the way, good morning. Right back to you. So imagine that there's a whole operating system over here that you can embody, so that instead of trying to figure out what the beliefs are that are stuck, instead of persistently and insistently trying to excavate yourself and analyze yourself, you could actually just embody an entirely new operating system around finances. Now, why did it happen? Because a tipping point was reached. That's what happens when we get new superpowers. When a new operating system is created in physics that everyone can access, and I'll give you an example. Why are our children born into a world where they can operate our iPhones, where they know how to use a computer by the time they're 5? Well, because the operating system was created by all of us by an asking. We had to struggle, ask, oh my God, help me please, And these kids are already born into the new operating system, and they're already hooked up to it. What we're doing is, without having to die and come back, hooking you into a new operating system so you don't have to struggle so much. Does this make sense to you? And please give me some hearts if you're picking up what I'm putting down. You have to understand the concept of embodiment and embodying a new operating system. And you have to understand, I want to see, just type in yes if you know what I'm talking about, because I want to make sure that you know what I'm talking about, okay? That I'm not going to give you new belief systems. That would be the booby prize. So now, imagine that enough people have emanated enough photon packages of light asking to not struggle anymore. Because in the land of money, what has been is that it's been all about power. It's been all about power. It's been about being enough. It's been about comparison and keeping up, which is completely not what the universe actually intended for us. The universe didn't intend that we use it for comparison. The universe didn't intend that we did anything about that. The universe intended that we actually come into the realm of finances from the point of view of it being yet another source of creativity, another resource for all of us, another thing to play with, another way to exchange, another way to have things be equitable, another way to be able to play with all of the resources here on the planet. It doesn't mean anything about you personally. It has nothing to do with you comparing to someone else. It doesn't have anything to do with you being enough or keeping up with the Joneses or being enough as a human being. It doesn't have anything to do with whether you have power or don't have power. As you all know, you have been in nature and you've experienced abundance. You know what it's like. All of you have been given something for free for no reason whatsoever. Each and every one of you have done that. So now, when we reach this tipping point in humanity, when enough people are realizing that there's too much contrast and that abundance is available to all of us, but they don't know how to get there, what consciousness does is it builds an operating system bridge. And that operating system bridge is available in physics. And that bridge becomes available to you and I through photon packages of light that your DNA picks up. If your DNA can pick up that operating system, what happens is your entire body opens up. What a portal is the doorway to the operating system. We're not going to embody the operating system today because that's going to take a weekend in Rhinebeck, New York. But what we are going to do is open up the doorway so you'll start feeling the codes already. You guys game for this? Does that make sense? So it's like we're opening your pineal gland. It's like if something new gets created, there's a new door, but there's a little key to the door. So imagine that we're putting the key in the door today to open the doorway. In Rhinebeck, New York, what we're going to do is walk through and play with everything in that door and embody it in our DNA. Make sense? All right. So the pineal gland is the doorway, and we're going to unlock a little frequency in that pineal gland, because if you don't, you got to know what you know first, right? So what's an activation? An activation, what it does is it brings through the idea, the concept, the frequencies associated with that operating system so that your mind can be open to what that is. And once your mind is open to what that is, then your DNA starts to be open to what that is. Do you understand what I'm saying? So once your mind is open to it, your entire biology opens up to it. You get a cascade effect of all sorts of different codes, etc. So operating system is waiting. Doorway is your pineal gland. Enough people have asked, there's a tipping point, and the codes are already available. The problem is you have to know enough about what's on the other side of the doorway in order to be able to open the door. Otherwise, it's like your body is turned to the city instead of turned to the harbor where the ships keep coming in. So we need to turn you to the harbor where the ships keep coming in. You with me? All right. So type in "bring it on" if you're ready. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to open your mind to a new paradigm so that you have a cascade effect in your body and in your pineal gland, such that a whole new paradigm for abundance opens up. So just say, "I'm ready." Just type it in, because here we go. So first of all, I want you to, and by the way, this is an experiential thing in your body. It's going to happen through conversation and you breathing. It's only going to take a couple of minutes, and you're going to feel a bridge being built to a new reality. So, ready to bring it? All right, here we go, you guys. Let's do this thing. By the way, you can listen to this activation over and over and over again. It will open the doorway. I really hope to see a lot of you in Rhinebeck, though. We'll put the link to sign up. It's one of the most affordable things we're doing, so make sure you go look. Okay, let's go. Kathy, Lori, everybody, woohoo! All right, Megan, Jackie, everybody breathe. Now imagine that you're breathing in all the keys to the doorway. Imagine right now that your first breath, we're going to do 3 breaths. The first breath is, imagine that right now the telomeres on the end of your chromosomes in your DNA right now are kind of woken up because we're talking about them. I want you to take a deep breath. And as you breathe in, imagine that photon packages of light are actually being received. They're actually being received by those telomeres, sender, receiver, satellite dishes. Your yes, when I ask you, are you a yes to this? Your yes literally wakes up those receptor sites, and your receptor sites go, oh, something interesting is going to happen. So typing it in is actually a thing, you guys. Saying it out loud is a thing. Your body responds. So they woke up. The codes already exist. We don't even know what they are. It doesn't matter. So as you breathe in the second breath, I want you to breathe in a breath of yes. So photon packages of light, millions per second, that assist you to open the doorway to a new paradigm for abundance, even though your mind doesn't know what it is yet. We'll get to it yet. Are already starting to come. They start rearranging your junk DNA, which is not really junk. Start rearranging your neurosynaptic highways to be open to something new, even though you don't know what it is yet. All right. Now, on this third breath, I want you to breathe in the codes of complete openness. Complete openness to the idea. Complete openness to the idea that there's a new way and it has nothing to do with your old way. Because we want to set up your biology to be completely receptive to the new way, even though you don't know. The body often sets off warning bells when we go into the land of you don't know what you don't know. I think on this one, because so many of us just know that abundance is our birthright, we fairly effortlessly are a yes to the land of the unknown. All right, here we go with the activation. Now this activation is going to be filled with codes. I'm going to speak really fast. What that means is we want to bypass your mind. That's why we're going to speak really fast. You can listen to it again if your intellect wants to hear it. But I want you to feel what I'm saying. Just keep breathing in. Feel these codes. So, if you're listening right now, you definitely are someone that was the foremother or the forefather of the children that are coming forth right now. Those new ones, whether they be 20 years old, 10 years old, or 1 year old, those new ones know that our birthright. They know it cellularly and biologically. That's why they're so resistant to any idea that they're not abundant. That's why they're such freedom seekers. They're such freedom seekers because they know that abundance is theirs. They're very frustrated that adults actually are resistant to that idea or have made up ideologies and belief systems that have nothing to do with the birthright that these ones are born into. The frustration lies in the idea that they know that it's forthcoming. They know who they are, but no one as an adult, or very few, have actually embodied the degree of flow that's possible for humanity. And so they're looking for answers for those that are bigger than them, and nobody has the answers. Nobody's created the codes. So the first step of creating those codes and having them be able to dive into an operating system that's really not being taught to them, they're having to figure it out themselves. If we were as the original forefathers and foremothers, and by the way, if you are one of those younger ones, you will completely understand what I'm saying. And these codes are for you as well. As we dive in together, what there is to see is that there's a powerful asking for those codes to be developed by the younger crowd. Unfortunately, most of those that are older have actually come to a place where they have resigned to the fact that you have to work really hard, have resigned to the fact that there is a pathway to financial abundance. There is a pathway. You have to prove yourself. You have to learn things. You have to not do quantum leaps. There's a very linear process. And it's very, very frustrating for a young person to look at that and know that something else is possible. So what we're doing right now is we're activating the idea for those of us that are the original unicorn, those of us that are willing to think outside of the box, those of us that really know that something greater and more powerful is actually calling us a purpose, a reason for being that would actually fulfill on that sense of urgency inside. It would collapse that sense of urgency that we would live in such a degree of flow. But the first thing we need to do is we need to give up any idea that in fact we need to work hard, whatever that means, that we have to prove ourselves worthy of it, that somehow we are connected to our ancestral DNA, our ancestral way of being, that this history that we are made of from our parents and from our ancestors or from our church or from our Catholic religion that says that, you can't have too much money, there's something to be ashamed of. All of those things are just human made. So we want to quantum leap this conversation. How we're going to quantum leap it is we're going to lump everything together. All the things together that have to do with man-made paradigms. It doesn't matter what it is. How you know it's a man-made paradigm is that it creates a resistance to flow. It creates a paradigm where things slow down. It feels confining. It feels in your body like that can't be true. What are some of those paradigms? Anything that you made up from your parents. Anything that you made up from your history. Anything you made up from your religion. Anything that you made up about your health. Anything you made up about DNA or ways of being inherited. None of that is true. You can transcend all of it. So we don't need to talk about each individual belief. That is truly the slowest way in order to make a quantum leap. That isn't a quantum leap. It's a linear process. What we're interested in is taking all of that which you've ever talked about around abundance in every program you've ever been in, and with every coach you've ever talked to, and any Facebook Live you've ever listened to, all of the times that you've been trying to work on yourself to try to fix yourself because you're broken somehow, because somehow you haven't aligned with all of your abundance. All of the abundance that's available to any divine child of an infinite universe. Any time that you've ever tried to fix yourself or you've talked about some paradigm that doesn't work for you, let's lump them all together. Let's put them in a big ball and call them collective ego. Now, let's imagine that it is in a balloon and that we're floating it off into consciousness. And let's imagine that these young ones hold the key to be able to have that balloon dissolve into the atmosphere. In fact, imagine that the young ones are actually blowing that balloon away. They're the ones that are on the other side of the bridge calling us forward. The younger they are, the more they call us. Imagine that it just dissolves, that every child that opens their mouth breathes a breath that blows it away. And then what we're left with is, so what is the new paradigm that I can be called over to? Well, let's activate that now. So the new paradigm, there's a hint, there's a clue. It's a big clue. The big clue is this. Right now you're breathing in what trees are breathing out. The abundance of air you did not have to earn today. In fact, you won't have to earn it any day. It is the pleasure of trees to be able to provide the atmosphere that is so abundant that you actually get to be alive. That is the truth. That is the most primordial, basic way that we can describe to you how it is that you can operate in a new way. Because exactly the way that the trees and the plants and the flowers breathe out what you breathe in is exactly the way that all of consciousness operates with you. All of consciousness operates with you from the place of there is only possibility, there is only abundance, there is only what you can receive. That is all there is. The only way that you would not experience it, because it's always coming to you. It's a misnomer to say that it does not come to you. It's always coming to you. You are magnetic to it. The issue is not seeing it because you've been in that bubble we just blew away. Rest assured that there isn't anyone that this is not available to. So imagine that all of consciousness is like a tree breathing out oxygen. All of consciousness is breathing out answers to your prayers constantly. The new operating system is not an operating system that is truly new, as it's always been available, but the issue is most of humanity hasn't been ready for it. You see, one of the things that would happen is everything would come to you so quickly that you would have to figure out a way to organize yourself to be able to receive at that speed. Most human beings cannot do that. They're too busy justifying their existence. So the doorway, the activation, the codes lie in the idea that your relationship to all that is, the over 95% of you that is in fact metaphysically existing, is the same operating system of how you exchange oxygen with all living things, all living plants. It's just an is. To open the doorway, you must consider that the operating system, much like oxygen flow, is an is. That is the first part of this conversation. The second part, and will be brief, if you're constantly receiving the oxygen of the possibilities that you've manifested because you've asked from living the contrast of life, you've experienced the contrast of life that causes you to ask for something that would make it more fluid, more playful, more awesome. And consciousness quite naturally responds with the oxygen of the answer. Then the only thing remaining in this particular operating system is, how do I dance with what is being sent to me? Not how do I fix myself so I can be in that flow. You're already in the flow. How do I raise my frequency and experience myself as that deserving? And it isn't about excavating. One of the most profound activations of this particular paradigm or new operating system, which isn't really new, the only newness is in its availability to you because you're so willing, because the contrast is so big in the world between the haves and the have-nots, so to speak, that there's enough asking for you to actually see this and receive it and stop working so hard at it. Even your working hard at being abundant is outside of the operating system of abundance, therefore it would never happen. It's so simple. Here's our homework to opening the doorway. The homework is to go out in nature on a daily basis. Even if you live in a city, you find some flowers. Be in the gratitude for the existence of the abundance of oxygen as a metaphor to opening the doorway. Be in the presence of the oxygen that flows between all of nature and you. Even if you're in the most concrete of places, it's going to take it's going to take 5 minutes and 55 seconds of presencing yourself. And it's going to take it's going to take individually for each of you a different amount of time to be able to embody. But the question is, the test is, will you keep going until you've embodied and you actually see that you are the operating system? You are that part of nature because you're breathing out what the trees need, just like you're emanating out what consciousness asked you to emanate out, which is askings and questions and yearnings for flow and expansiveness and creativity. It's the same exchange. 5 minutes and 55 seconds to open this doorway. Do it with us for as long as it takes for you. For some, it will take just a few days. And ask yourself the question, am I willing to embody this as how it is? And to relinquish anything that isn't this without trying to fix that which isn't this. Just watch it come up and leave. All right. Everybody breathe. Definitely have fun with this. Know that all is well. Know that this is opening a doorway to a new paradigm, but you have to do the work in 3 dimensions in order to bring these codes through. It's exactly the same operating system as nature operates with respect to you. Part of the reason why nature operates this way with you is because it's a perfect living metaphor in 3D for what happens in multi-D. So, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Again, make sure, if you haven't yet, these videos will be available on our YouTube page. You'll find it at youtube.com/The Wide Awakening. Go and like us and follow us. We really appreciate that. I really want you guys to understand how to collapse, to open the portal to collapsing. This is really important work. Because if we're going to change the way we operate in this world, and we're going to shift the economic infrastructure and the political infrastructure, and we're going to do our work as bridge builders in this world for our own lives, it actually requires embodying these codes ourselves. Do you understand? Because then you become an emanator and you exponentially affect the people around you by how you operate. So for me, opening these doorways as a pathway to this very important event we're doing in Rhinebeck, New York on June 21st, if you're up for embodiment, come and play, and it's going to be fun.